In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a great value RTX 3060 gaming PC build, featuring, well, a 3060, a brand new Core i5 and loads of other great hardware. I'll be covering off the build process from start right through to finish before testing performance later too. Let's do this. Ebuyer is your one-stop shop for great deals on technology and gaming hardware here in the UK. If you're looking to build a new PC this year or just supercharge your setup with a new monitor or some peripherals, head over to ebuyer.com and check out their wide range of great deals. What's more, they've also got some great deals on pre-built PCs from AlphaSync, awesome systems that are ready to ship. Check them out at the link in the description below. We're going to kick things off as always by looking at our CPU and motherboard pairing. Intel's Core i5-12400F for the processor and the MSI MAG B660M Mortar for the motherboard. Now, the i5-12400F is a sweet spot when it comes to gaming at the moment. With a boost clock that goes to 4.4 GHz, very impressive, and 6 cores with 12 threads, it ticks all the boxes nicely, and even comes included with one of Intel's much improved stock coolers. More on that later. Now, we're going to be coupling this up with a B660 motherboard. The reason for going B660 is that it's cheaper than Intel's higher-end Z690 chipset, but still gives us overclocking support for the processor and, more crucially, the memory. The board also supports the latest super-fast Gen 4 SSDs with some heatsinks included, 4 RAM DIMM slots for good upgradability, and a solid rear I/O that includes Wi-Fi, USB-C, and some really speedy 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, really future-proofing the build for, well, the future. We're going to install the CPU into the motherboard, which is a nice and easy process. First, you want to locate the triangle on your CPU socket, then the triangle on the processor itself. Proceed by pulling up the protective cover, matching the triangles and seating the processor into place. Pop the socket back down afterwards in the exact way that you opened it up, but reverse this time, and your processor is all complete. I think we need an action replay of that one. The cover went absolutely flying. Talking of absolutely flying, we're going to move on to the memory next as we fly through the build process in this video. Now, for the RAM, I've gone for this lovely RGB kit from XPG by AData, one of the biggest DRAM makers in the world. 16 gigabytes at a 3600 MHz speed works perfectly. This board as well crucially supports DDR4 memory, meaning we can save quite a bit of cash on the RAM when compared to the newer and much more pricey DDR5 standard. Line up the notch on the RAM DIMM with the notch on the DIMM slot itself, slide it into place nice and carefully, and then apply pressure like so when you're confident it's installed. And with that done, the RAM is into place. We're going to move on next to the storage in the build. And if you're going for an M.2 drive like we are, and like I'd recommend to the majority of you, then you can do this now, before even thinking about your case or any hard drive sleds. And that's because this drive goes directly into the motherboard, into one of those silver slots we referred to earlier. Now, for this stage of the build, you'll need to throw away your regular Phillips head and pick yourself up a much smaller screwdriver, often referred to here on the channel as a teeny tiny screwdriver. We're going to use this to remove the top silver slot on the motherboard to free up room to install the SSD. Slide the drive into the slot at sort of a 45-degree angle before pushing it back down flat once again. Then return the silver heat spreader back into place and secure this down with the screws we just removed. That will in turn hold the drive down too, which is always handy and just stops our SSD from actually going anywhere. Nice and easy, lovely jubbly, as we'd say here in the UK. To wrap things up, we're going to install the cooler, and I've picked Intel's stock cooler. It's new and improved for 12th gen and comes included in the box for free. A Hyper 212 or a Be Quiet basic air cooler would be a nice upgrade, but we'll save the $30 or $40 today, as this is going to work more than well enough, as you'll see in the gaming benchmarks later. It will usually come with pre-applied thermal paste, allowing us basically to seat the cooler on the CPU and push it down with each of the plastic pins. These then just go through the holes on the motherboard. There's no backplate or anything extra required. Just remember, if you've used the cooler before or the installation failed, add some of your own thermal paste on now to make sure you've got that perfect thermal bond between the processor and your cooling solution. Simples. And then once the cooler's in, we can move on to the case. And for this build, I've gone MSI again. MSI case, cooler, no, case, motherboard and GPU. It's been a long day, guys. I don't know what to say. This is the stage of the build where you need scissors. So I'll be right back. I've got to go and locate where one of our many pairs are currently living. Scissors, located, box, open. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I really like that. It looks better in person than it does online, so hopefully we can show that. It's got two fans at the front. There is a gap though where I think we can just put one more. It will look more clean that way. The MSI logo's nice. The IO at the top is basic but pretty good. Tempered glass side panel that doesn't go all the way down, but this nice MAG branding. Yeah, I'm feeling this. And it's also not too large, despite supporting full-size ATX motherboards. Now, with all cases, as long as they're not like a Corsair 7000 series or one of those weird shaped ones that looks like the pyramids of Giza, then you can go ahead and lie it flat on its back for the next stage. And the next stage is installing the motherboard. I often find at this stage removing as many side panels as possible makes it as easy as possible to actually get the board into place. What we need to do here is locate each of the white holes on the bottom of the motherboard. Not too difficult with MSI as they circle them really nicely. And we need to ensure that these 3, 6, 8 holes align with standoffs in the case. Let's have a look at the ones that are in the right place and then the ones that aren't, as that makes the most sense. So there's 2 here at the top, they're looking A-okay. 2 in the middle, they're looking good too. The 2 at the bottom are in the wrong place. They need to move up very slightly to this hole and this hole just here. And we also need 2 on the right-hand side. Now, luckily for us, you do get this included bag with your motherboard. No, your case. I'm losing the plot today, ladies and gents. This comes included with your case and has some spare gold standoffs in. So we can use these to plug the gaps, move the ones from the bottom to the top, and then slide the board into place. Our motherboard has a built-in IO shield, meaning nothing to worry about here, but now would be the time to clip your manual one in if your motherboard is a bit less on the fancy side. Add the board in, screw it down through each of the 8 screw hole locations, and we're pretty much good to go. Next up then, we're going to look at the GPU and go ahead and install this into the build. Now I've gone ahead and picked up this MSI Gaming X Trio 3060. Now the 3060 GPU is perfect for 1080p gaming, as we discussed in a recent GPU comparison video. It's a card which performs very well in all of the latest AAA titles and can bash out a few hundred frames per second in older, more esports oriented games too. GPU stock and availability around the world is improving. It's not perfect everywhere, and I obviously can't comment for every single retailer in every single geography, but I will pop links below that show the latest pricing and availability for all components mentioned in this build. With support for Nvidia's ray tracing, but perhaps more crucially DLSS, which can help to supercharge your frame rate, as we discussed in a recent video on the Ebuyer YouTube channel. Shout out to those guys for letting me guest present some of their content. It's a really balanced card that does outperform some of AMD's options on the other side of the market. Now what we're going to do at this stage is we're going to grab the card and we're going to hover it over the PCIe slot in the case. This will then show you which of the rear PCIe lane covers need removing. And in this instance today, it's actually the top 2 right here. Grab yourself a screwdriver to loosen this rear PCIe shield, if you will. Pull that to one side and then actually go ahead and snap out the lanes we don't need. With this being a more budget-oriented case, they just clip out like so. And there are spare replacements included in the box because these ones are of course single use. You can't go ahead and pop them back on later on. Take out your second one just like so and spin the case back around. The GPU in this build is a slightly tight fit, I'm not going to lie to you, but it does fit a-okay. And we're just going to angle it in like so. Remember to push back the clip on your PCIe slot, slide your graphics card into place, and you will hear a nice satisfying sound. We can then screw it in and pop the cover back on as well with that thumb screw, and we're going to deal with giving this power in the cables and wiring section, which we'll look at shortly. But first, the power supply. Now installing the power supply in any build is one of the more lengthy processes. It's not particularly difficult, but I will be guiding you through each of the steps so you can follow along at home for yourself if you wish. For this build, I've picked up the DeepCool DQ 650 MV2L. Basically, it's a 650 watt power supply that has enough wattage for what we're looking for today for our 3060 and has a fully modular interface. What's more, a 10-year warranty and 80 plus gold certification make sure you're not quite set for life when it comes to the unit, but you're set for quite a long time. We're going to be installing the following cables into the modular PSU interface first, including the 24-pin motherboard power cable, a 6+2-pin PCIe power connector, a 4+4-pin CPU power connection, and then of course our SATA and Molex cables, which we'll be using to power up the RGB hub on our case. The ends you've just seen will go to the motherboard in a moment, while the other ends of the cables plug up to the top of the PSU. And everything's nicely labelled, so you know where the SATA, motherboard, VGA, all those connections go. If it doesn't fit, it's in the wrong socket, to try and move it about until you're all good to go. Once that's done, we can spin the case around and slide the power supply in, screwing it in with 4 screws, 1 in each corner. Once that's in, we can then plug up the power cables first of all, which includes the motherboard power cable to the right hand side of the motherboard. This is the largest connection of the bunch. We're then going to follow this up by adding in a CPU power cable to the top left of the motherboard, which is 4+4 pins, and finish things off with the graphics card, which is made up of 2 6+2-pin PCIe power connectors. Finally, to really wrap things up, we're going to add in our front panel connections. These include the HD audio cable, which powers up our headphone and mic jacks and goes to the bottom left corner of the motherboard, USB 3, which is the largest front panel cable of the bunch and is notched, so only goes in one way round, before finally concluding matters with our JFP1 connections, making the power and reset buttons and all the indicator lights work a-okay. We'll pop a diagram on your screen now for this one to make things a bit easier to follow. And once you've done that, we can boot the system up and check out the performance very shortly. But first, don't go anywhere, because we're going to see how good the PC looks when it's all powered up, in the only way we know how. I'll see you in a second, but first, roll that montage. Lovely stuff. Now that we've seen how good this awesome 3060 build looks and how to put it together, we need to make sure the performance stacks up to what we'd expect from a system like this. If you're going to be spending $1,000, you want to make sure you can get 60 or 100 FPS, and here we definitely saw those results. On your screen is a summary of everything we managed to gather, but we're going to look in deeper detail title by title in just a moment. You'll also find temperature info for the CPU and GPU on your screen now. Let's look at GTA 5 first up. Here we tested at 1080p high and ran the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode. We managed to surpass 155 frames per second with solid 90 and 99th percentile results that made the game look, frankly, really good. You've definitely got legs for 1440p gaming at 60 or even 100 FPS in GTA 5, but 1080p is where we focused our testing today. Next up, we looked at Battlefield 2042, testing at 1080p high settings with DLSS enabled and set to performance mode. We pulled in 107 frames per second on average with 94 and 85 for the 90 and 99th percentile results. Next up is Call of Duty's Vanguard. Here we tested at 1080p high settings, and this time pulled in 128 frames per second. This was without DLSS enabled. 90 and 99th percentiles were pretty consistent too, and here we used both NVIDIA FrameView and MSI Afterburner's Reaver Tuner in order to gather our frame rate data. Next up, we tested the same game, COD Vanguard, but with DLSS enabled and set to performance mode. We managed to gain 39 additional frames per second, equal to about 30% frame rate upside. It just shows the power of enabling DLSS, and it also shows a huge advantage NVIDIA currently have over AMD, though they do appear to be catching up on the resolution scaler front. Next up is Forza Horizon 5, 1080p ultra settings with the ultra preset, and of course VSync disabled to give us unlimited FPS. Here we got 84 FPS on average using that inbuilt benchmarking mode, with a game that looked really great. You've got some legs here at 1440p to still achieve around 60 FPS, but not much more, and definitely not anything at 4K. Though that is of course not the intended use case of this build. Next is the new kid on the block, one of the latest titles out there, Halo Infinite. Here at 1080p high settings, we managed to achieve over 100 FPS on average, 105 to be precise. And personally, I think the game looked great. It shows the versatility of the 3060. Halo didn't come out for another year after the 3060 launched, so for it to pick it up without any problems is an impressive demonstration of the 3060's ability. After that, we tested out Apex Legends, switching back to some of the more traditional first-person shooters. Here we pulled in 160 frames per second at 1080p high settings, with 146 and 119 for the 90 and 99th percentiles. To wrap things up, we also looked at a couple more first-person shooters. Call of Duty Warzone, but first, Fortnite. At 1080p competitive settings, we managed to achieve over 200 frames per second. 40 FPS over, to be precise, 240 FPS at 1080p competitive. Wow. That's a staggering 60 FPS more than on a 3050, which still achieved in the hundreds. Great performance, game looked great, and it gives you that nice competitive performance upside. Finally, to wrap things up, we tested out COD's Warzone at 1080p high with DLSS enabled once again. Here we pulled in just shy of 125 FPS in the multiplayer Battle Royale mode and saw some great results. Love a bit of COD Warzone, and this build performs really well in that title. And with that just about wraps it up for this one. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a big old like rating, get subscribed, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.